Welcome to another episode of the Unpilled podcast. First of all, thank you for staying with us over the past 2 years as we journeyed through the field of functional genomics featuring a variety of exceptional biohackers. Today's episode is a special one as we close the book of our second season. With that, we bring you highlights from some of your favorite episodes. Up first, we take a look into our episode on clearing the air on mold and mycotoxins with Jason Earle. This particular clip focuses on what to look out for, a practice we should do not just for mold, but also with regards to our environment and factors that affect our health.
So what's some warning flags? Suppose somebody's like, "Oh, I got to order this test. I think this sounds like me." What are they looking out for?
So I always say if you see something, smell something, or feel something, do something. So what does that look like? If you see something, you're always looking for moisture. At the core of it, people think about mold as the problem or mold as a root cause, but there's actually a root cause to that, which is dampness or moisture, right?
Right.
Mold will
Yep.
not grow in the absence of dampness. It likes the same conditions we do in terms of temperature. It likes moisture too. It likes a little more moisture than we do. So it likes to hang out near us and waiting for us to just fall out of balance, you know?
Yeah.
And so what we're looking for is any signs of dampness or moisture. And so that would be staining, discoloration, peeling paint, trim pulling away is a dead giveaway in many cases. You're looking for rusty tack strips at the corner under carpet. Water bugs are also a big clue. Obviously visible mold, but that's not always so easy to detect because sometimes mold can be very, very subtle.
Yeah.
Many of the early or what they call primary colonizers that show up first when there's a dampness problem are actually clear or colorless in terms of spores, or they're very light yellow. So you need to have a flashlight that you can shine at an angle, sort of to reveal the texture of it. And so, this is why a trained eye is often very helpful with these things. But we also made an ebook, which we can talk about later, that helps people sort of do an inspection of their own home, a visual inspection. So you're looking for any signs of dampness. You're looking for any routes of moisture intrusion. Quite frankly, you're looking for building defects that could cause these problems as well, because it's not just about finding it; it's also about preventing it. So if you see something, do something. If you smell something, so one of the primary causes of mold-related illness, contrary to popular opinion, it's not mycotoxins. It's actually the microbial smell, what they call microbial VOCs. And so mold is a chemical factory when it's growing. I mean, it's producing, and by the way, one of the most popular microbial VOCs happens to be alcohol, right, which comes from fermentation. But we also know that molds produce, actively growing molds produce group 1 carcinogens like benzene and really nasty chemicals that look a lot like industrial solvents. And we know that these things are bad to breathe in occupational workplaces. You wouldn't want to hang out and breathe gasoline. But the actively growing mold produces very, very toxic chemicals. Like I said, this musty smell, which has long been considered an aesthetic nuisance, just a basement smell, is actually neurotoxic. And we can dig into that a little bit more because there's a strong correlation between exposure to the musty smell and asthma rates. It doubles the risk of asthma in children. Studies have shown a direct correlation between the musty smell and depression. And in animal studies, it shows that the fruit flies stop producing dopamine when they're exposed to the smell. They develop locomotor disorder, mitochondrial disorders, all sorts of problems. They stop reproducing, Parkinsonian-like symptoms. So the musty smell is a big deal, but it's also the first clue you get when mold is growing. So it's a signal. I would argue it's a pain signal from the building telling you that there's something wrong in the building. Right. And then it's also at the same time a health hazard. So if you smell something, that's your first clue. So trust your nose and don't just dismiss that. That's not a normal thing in a building. That is a clear sign that there's an imbalance, that there's mold growth. So if you see something, if you smell something, and then if you feel something, and feeling something, this is where I always encourage people to trust your senses, trust your intuition. We almost always know when something's wrong in us, certainly also around us. Our buildings are an extension of our immune system. They're like an exoskin or an exoskeleton. And most people are in tune with that, whether they're aware of it or not. And they know when there's an imbalance, especially women, by the way, and especially pregnant women. They have an incredible sixth sense about these things. And so when you start to notice that things feel better when you leave the building, you might have an indoor air quality problem. And it could be mold or it could be VOCs or a combination thereof. And most homes that I go into that have a mold problem also have a problem with VOCs, which is the man-made chemicals that come from our building materials and the finishes and the furnishings and personal care products and cleaning products. All of these things build up in our indoor environment. And so it's kind of a potpourri of chemicals, both man-made and microbial, that contribute to these things. But so basically that's the idea, is that keep your senses aware. See something, smell something, or feel something. The feeling something is a little more nebulous though, because some of these are going to be, upper respiratory, allergic type reactions, but many times it's more, it's on the squishier side. So you're talking about headaches, nausea, dizziness, fatigue, difficulty concentrating, cognitive impairment. Also, inflammation is a huge part of mold and biotoxin related illness, where you start to see people that have, they get puffy, they get weight gain. And of course, inflammation is a gateway to a whole host of other illnesses, right? And so mold tends to be the straw that breaks the camel's back. And what we see also a lot is that mold tends to be the thing that brings out other latent symptom profiles. So you might have an autoimmune disease that you may not be aware of, but the mold exposure and the VOC exposure, by the way, can bring these things up and throw your body out of equilibrium.
In this clip, we go back to our episode with Ken Swartz on the topic of C60, which battles the impact of aging, a topic important for many, especially now that food we intake does not have the same nutrient density it had before.
What is your body doing on its own, if anything? Meaning, is this something that are we enhancing an existing process, or are we completely adding in something new that the body's not even doing?
Well, usually the body produces SOD, superoxide dismutase catalase, to neutralize those superoxides, and which is, and when you're young, it's probably you probably have enough, but a lot of people as they grow older produce a lot less SOD and catalase. And so the mitochondria actually have their own DNA, and they kind of have a little self-regulating. So if SOD levels go down, the mitochondria will actually adjust and reduce their production of SOD. They basically turn slow, they got a little knob there, and they can basically reduce their production of ATP and pregnenolone and all the other things that they make because they're getting damaged, right? They don't want to get oxidatively damaged. And so that's the problem for people as you get older. Now your cells aren't getting enough ATP or pregnenolone, and so your hormone levels drop and your energy levels drop. And that's people say, that's what people notice a lot about aging. Well, I just don't have any energy, and I can't get it up because all those different things that come with aging. Well, it's basically being caused by the body not being able to produce enough SOD. So when you take C60 as an SOD mimic, it just replaces that missing SOD, and so your mitochondria can crank back up and start producing more ATP and more pregnenolone and precursors for RNA and DNA synthesis, and general, your cells work better, and therefore general health improves.
So a lot of people today, as they mature, are getting onto hormone therapies to maintain levels. So are you suggesting that if you use carbon-60 to charge the cells and maintain it at its prime, that hormones are going to stay balanced and you may not need that third-party intervention of like a BHRT?
Well, yes, I'm not a medical doctor. I cannot give medical advice,
Sure.
but I can tell you anecdotal situations that have happened with some of our patients. Here's a typical one. You have a 71-year-old guy. He goes down to his doctor. He has a testosterone level of 350, which is kind of low. So his doctor gives him some creams, and he's up in the low 700s. He's been doing this for a couple of years, right? It's nothing new. Well, he goes in, he starts using C60, and a couple months later, he goes in to get his biannual testing, and his testosterone level is 1200.
Wow.
And so the doctor reduces his creams. So that's kind of an example of what can happen with C60. So it definitely, what it does is C60 produces goes in the mitochondria. Mitochondria take LDL cholesterol and turn it into pregnenolone, which is the precursor molecule for all the hormones. So by the way, people that take C60 also notice a drop in LDL cholesterol.
We also take a look back at the moments where we expand our knowledge with new concepts surrounding our health, taking it to a deeper level. Take this next clip, for example, where we discuss quantum biology with Catherine Clinton.
What is quantum biology? Why is quantum biology? What are we talking about here?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's a great question. People hear the word quantum and they start to think woo-woo, strange things, but quantum physics is the most substantiated theory out there. It's the most successful theory we have to date to explain things, and that applies to our biology as well. So, quantum biology is really talking about how life works at the nano size, how photons of light impact our biology, photons of sound, frequency information, electromagnetic fields, and this is within the body and external to the body. So we're talking about how quantum phenomenon are at play in these nano-sized workings in our body, our enzymes, our proteins, and the electron transport chain and the mitochondria, just the flow of electrons and protons maintaining that negative charge that we need for life. And that's what we're talking about. And it just, spider webs out to touch so many different topics.
And I think up until recently, people just didn't look at this realm of science in the context of health. It was more like the context of trying to understand the body and biological function, but it was nobody was dipping into to say, how do I use this to improve my health outcome? But now we're learning this is exactly where we should be starting, because it's the innate, foundation of every biological process. And if you understand how these work, you can then start to tune those dials and make things better.
On to the next. We also dove into relevant topics that some may still be facing today. We had our discussion with Dr. Michael Turner, who has given his insights and advice on how to turn things around when you or a person you care about is going through the long-haul effects of COVID-19 from the SARS-CoV-2 virus that has vastly affected the whole world for the past few years.
That you're talking about, that microclotting, is that why we're seeing women that are particularly talking about sort of female hormone type issues that may be pointing at the hormones of the cycle, but maybe is it just the clotting itself which is the problem?
Well, there are a few problems. So you raise a good point. So the spike proteins directly cause blood clotting, and that can affect any given organ system. And of course, if you have diminished blood flow, you can get organ system dysfunction and even cell death. Okay, so that could occur, for example, in the ovaries, understandably. Besides that, though, the spike protein also is very structurally similar to many human proteins. And so there's a phenomenon called molecular mimicry. And essentially, the immune system has trouble distinguishing friend from foe, so to speak, because the spike protein is so structurally similar to other human proteins. So we know that it provokes a lot of autoimmune problems. And again, that can settle. So for example, let's say the adrenal glands. Patient has long COVID and they're exhausted. And we wonder why. And we check their adrenal output and it's low. And then we check for the presence of antibodies against one of the adrenal proteins. And we see that they have positive antibodies. And they never had this, let's say, at baseline before COVID, right? What happened was the COVID virus stimulated an autoimmune problem for being structurally similar to some of those adrenal proteins. And the immune system is now reacting against it. So there can be autoimmune part of destruction of any given hormone system, unfortunately.
That's an eye-opener, because people don't realize that mimicking that's going on internally, right?
Yes.
It's clear, it's been documented, seen everywhere, but we're not addressing it. We're addressing the symptom and how people feel. So people are going in for anxiety and brain fog and hormone-related issues and cycle issues, and they're fixing those problems without fixing the underlying driver, which is going to keep fueling the problem.
Health optimization and having better nutrient availability and absorption are common discussions in the biohacking world. Our next clip with Catherine Arnstein provides a solution for dense nutrient bioavailability in algae and spirulina tablets.
I find that most of the greatest healthcare innovation comes from personal need. It comes from, and this is my own story. Everybody knows my story. You've heard it before. I was sick. I fixed myself, and all of a sudden I felt like I needed to fix the world. Then we have Catherine. So Catherine kind of went through a similar journey through her extended family, and we're gonna dive deep into the science of mitochondria and spirulina today. from her perspective, because she out of need landed on this tool and was so wowed by what she did that she ended up turning it into a business to help other people. Now she's doing that with thousands of people. So thank you for joining us here today.
Yes, well, thank you. Yes, and personal need is the mother of invention. I find, certainly when it comes to the health community, biohacking community, because all of us were not satisfied with the solutions that were provided and lifted the hood to find more. And so that's what happened to me.
Yeah, so tell us about it. I think it was your sister. What
Yeah,
exactly
yeah.
happened?
So, like you, I'm Canadian, although I've lived in the United States for 33 years. I'm in Boston, Massachusetts, but all my family are still in Canada. And I only have two sisters, but I'm very close to them. And 15 years ago, my younger sister in Toronto developed breast cancer. First of all, I want everyone to know that she completely healed, and we celebrate her being cancer-free every year, which is now 12th year.
Amazing.
And so as she was preparing for her chemo, her oncologist, which of course is a cancer specialist doctor, told her she needed to change her diet to an alkaline diet because it would help with her healing. Now, they didn't tell her what exactly an alkaline diet was or why specifically it would be good for her. So the first call she made was to me, her big sister who loves her. Not that I knew anything about nutrition. I knew nothing about nutrition, nothing. I was an MBA from Western Ivy School doing international business, nothing to do with nutrition. But I'm a really good researcher and I can find out just about anything. So I said, I have no idea what this alkaline diet stuff is, but I will find out. And I did. And it turned out to be mostly a plant-based diet because of the phytonutrients and the chlorophyll that are very alkaline. We could talk a bit more about the alkaline diet because cancer cannot exist. Otto Warburg, a Nobel Prize winner, German prize winner scientist from the 1940s, he discovered that cancer cannot exist in a cell that is alkaline. It can only exist in cells that are acidic. So this is one of the reasons why my sister's oncologist wanted her to have an alkaline diet to help make sure that the pH of her cells and her blood, which is even more alkaline, would be slightly alkaline to prevent the cancer from growing or even help it to die. So anyways, I helped her figure that out. She went on to do her chemo and change her diet, completely healed. I started learning more about plant-based nutrition. Now, this was 15 years ago when nobody was talking about plant-based nutrition like they are now. Now it's everywhere, but 15 years ago, not a single company was talking about it. So I thought this was pretty powerful. So I thought more people need to know about this. And I had no idea how I was going to do it, but I gave up my 25-year corporate career, went back to school, got a health coaching certificate from the Institute for Integrative Nutrition. Gave me a little bit of grounding in nutrition, not a lot, to be perfectly honest. But then I taught plant-based nutrition for a year. And this is what truly led me to algae, because I found out that as I was teaching people the importance of eating more vegetables, I got all this pushback because people were saying, well, it's too much work. They're too heavy to carry from the grocery store. They give me gas. They go bad. My kids won't eat them. My husband won't eat them. I thought, okay, if I can't get people to eat more vegetables, and mothers have been trying to get their children to eat more vegetables since the earth began, I thought I have to find something that's easy and fast that gives them the nutrition of vegetables without any of the work. So I just went and did a deep dive on everything I'd found for my sister that had been in my search for alkaline foods. And that's when I discovered algae.
Lastly, we are grateful for the discussions and partnerships we have forged throughout the season. Our continued success and presence would not be possible without you, our audience. We listen to you. We read your comments. We provide you content you want to hear. A highly requested topic has been inflammation and detox. Here's a clip with Cassie Bjork discussing simple ways to lower inflammation through detox.
So let's jump into the toxin side of things, because this is an area that people completely outside of their awareness. What does this have to do with fat? I can understand disease. I can understand whatever. Like, why are these two things being put together? And I know this is a big part of your work, a big part of your book.
Yeah.
So what's the story there?
Well, because they're stored in your fat cells. So toxins, will accumulate in your fat cells and they can stay lodged there for years. And it can be a vicious cycle because if you're tired, which oftentimes you are, if you've got inflammation going on, again, your body's healing that inflammation. It's not giving you energy. So your energy is going into healing inflammation. If you're tired, your body is going to tap into your fat cells to grab energy. And then it also grabs more toxins. And that can actually make you more tired. And it's like this vicious cycle. So, and then also the toxins can fuel inflammation, and it can fuel a lot of other stuff. It can wreak havoc on hormones and organ damage, and it can mutate DNA and cause damage to your immune systems. There's a lot of problems with having toxins just stored up in our body. So really, the more we can lessen our toxic burden on the body, the better. And that was kind of actually one of the next steps I was going to kind of go into, because yes, like the food is important, and I never want to downplay food because I'm a registered dietitian and I see the power of food and nutrients every day. And the reality is, like you said, we're continually being bombarded with toxins in our food, in our hair products and cleaning materials, in the air we breathe. And those get absorbed and they accumulate in our body. And anytime we have toxins built up, just like anytime we have inflammation accumulated, your body is going to have to focus its energy and resources on eliminating toxins, which is going to block your body's ability to lose weight. And it's really going to also wreak havoc on your energy and your brain power and your immunity and your skin and just how you overall feel as a human being. So we kind of go back to, all of the things that we're doing in our life. And also another thing too is small changes, they add up over time. So sometimes people just feel so overwhelmed because it's like, okay, I've got inflammation and I've got toxic buildup. And like, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do all of this. I can't change my whole lifestyle. I'm a busy person. And, I hear a lot of the reasons why people get stuck with getting started. But the reality is, you can just start with like a few things, and even just a few things can be really, really powerful over time. And then from there, you habit stack and you add, extra things on as you go. It's not like you have to change everything at once. Some people do, but I think the biggest thing is doing something that you're actually going to do, and being honest with yourself. Like, what are a couple action steps we can take right now instead of feeling like you have to overhaul everything all at once? Because that can just be a way to keep you stuck, and we want to move people forward.
Once again, thank you for showing your support and interest in the Unpilled podcast. This has been Dr. Lara Varden. Stay tuned as we return and continue to provide you with your prescription for life.